Welcome to Renewing Homes, the residential retrofit podcast. I'm your host, Ben Hildebrand. This show explores how we improve existing homes through better planning and design, better retrofit work, and better decision making. Better homes through better retrofits. Enjoy the episode. Joining me today are Meredith Hamstead and Cindy Gareau. We're going to have an amazing discussion around the integrated design process and how that fits into residential retrofits and the importance of it. But first, before we dive in, Meredith and Cindy, can you both introduce yourselves briefly? Tell us a bit about who you are and what you're doing in the industry.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. And thanks for having me here. This is really quite exciting. Don't get a chance to talk about IDP to a larger audience very often. So this is nice. I am a mom. I'm a skier. I'm a climate activist. And together with my husband, Paul Denchuk, we own a small residential construction company in Southeast British Columbia. We live in the four-season resort community of Invermere. At ThinkBright, we only do two things. We build at step 5 of the BC Energy Step Code, so high performance new homes, and we do deep energy retrofits. And I think one of the things that's unique about ThinkBright Homes is that we do this across the full spectrum of the market, from like affordable homes to high-end luxury homes. We are really excited to have the opportunity to talk about how IDP drives success in all of our projects. A whole nother podcast on new builds. Certainly is the IDP is the root of our success in the retrofit world.
Cindy, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Cindy Gareau, I'm the executive director of Deep Breath, the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors. We call ourselves CASE, and we're the national association that really represents CEAs and their community across Canada. I am also a mom and have a cat. And we have been promoting the practice of IDP for 6 or 7 years now as an association, because we see the value both in new construction as well as in retrofits. And as a result, Casey has actually developed IDP facilitation training, which we've been delivering again for several years. And I think now there are over 30 IDP facilitators qualified across the country. So we're very proud of that. And we're continuing to push the idea of plan first, have a smart plan, and then do your project.
Yeah, it's all about the plan, and we'll get into that a bit. But first, Meredith, let's start by talking about why do we need IDP, and I think that starts off with, how is a deep energy retrofit different from a standard renovation? Because there's a lot of contractors out there that can go around and just replace your cladding and windows, and we'll avoid the conversation about how well they might be doing that. But retrofits can be a lot more than that. Why don't you explain kind of
Yeah.
how that varies?
What's the crux of the matter? I think it's a really important question because I don't think that the language of retrofits and integrated design process has really started to resonate with homeowners. I don't even think it's really started to stick yet in industry. So the first question is, hey, I'm going to hire you to do some stuff for me. Why is a retrofit different than a renovation? And there are a couple of things to say about that. One is that every retrofit is also a renovation, but not every renovation is a retrofit.
That's a great way of putting it.
A renovation is about, how do we make this house nicer? A retrofit is about, how do we make this house better? So in a renovation, success is primarily measured in terms of like visual satisfaction. Do I like it more? Maybe you want another bedroom. Maybe you want your kitchen updated. In a retrofit, success is primarily measured in lasting quality, performance, comfort, air quality, energy efficiency. It's about how the house works for you. It's about the value of your capital asset. And it's also going to be a renovation. So it's also going to make your house nicer too. So you can switch out windows and it's a renovation, or you can switch out windows and it's a retrofit. They're not the same thing because the intention is very different. We get more out of a renovation with a good plan than we could ever get, or we get more out of a retrofit with a good plan than we could ever get out of a renovation.
Hmm. And I guess that leads to the point of like, what does that plan look like? How do we pull off that plan for retrofit? I think before diving into that, I always like what Peter Amarangan talks about in avoiding piecemeal retrofits. And we want to not do this window replacement in this part of the house over here, and we're going to add some insulation in the attic over there, and maybe we'll reclad the house because it looks nice. We're not really, there's no real end thought or plan, and that plan is important.
That sounds like a demolition project to me,
Yeah,
actually. Ultimately, a slow moving demolition project that's just going to tear your house down over time.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So there's a lot we need for that plan, and how the question is, how do we really pull that off properly for a retrofit project?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I had a call from BC Housing asking, like, what is one of the barriers to people uptaking IDP and in the industry and to homeowners seeking IDP? And I said, well, I think the problem is actually IDP. We're talking about something that the language hasn't stuck with people. What we're really talking about is competent, outcomes focused project management. It's good project management as opposed to disintegrated project management. And so
Yep.
if we know we're talking about IDP, but I think we need to start to manage the language a little bit so that we're talking about what people get out of it. And what they get out of it is a well managed project where costs are managed because the plan is produced upfront collaboratively with the homeowner and the trades and everybody who needs to be involved and heavy. It's really annoying at the front end of the project to spend so much time in planning, but then when you deliver that project, headache free, hassle free, profitable, happy
Yeah.
customers. It's just absolutely a win win for everybody and predictable outcomes for rebate providers, governments that are trying to
Hmm.
achieve
Yeah.
climate targets.
I guess it's really easy to just dive into this conversation, but I'm not sure if we've really given a formal definition to the integrated design process. Do you want to touch on that for us, Cindy?
Sure. And Meredith, I agree that, so IDP has been around in part three. Everybody knows in part three what IDP is. We
Mhm.
also see it, this principle practice. We also see, when people are designing cars, when they're doing cell phones, there's a big plan. There's people that are coming together before they actually build the product, let's call it. And really, in this case, the house is the product. So there needs to be a plan to make sure that whatever we're putting together has been well thought out. And in order to do that, we have to bring in the players who are going to be involved. And so, Meredith, you mentioned, all these different people come together. I think, first of all, I think the term is scary. IDP, it sounds very formal, but really it's putting together, like you say, Meredith, a smart plan at the beginning. Let's look at how we are going to plan the investment that you are going to be making into your home, into how you're going to use the home. We often don't think about that investment. Like the home is your largest capital investment. And we rely on the homeowners often rely on that expert thinking that they know what they're doing. And if you're just leaning on one person, they may not know everything. I mean, one person can't know all. So, this is the advantage. We bring together all the players at the beginning. And yes, it's a heavy lift at the beginning, but you're going to save on cost, time, headaches,
Callback.
And those
callbacks.
are all kind of tied together too, the cost, time, and
They're
headache. They can all happen at
absolute.
once.
Absolutely. And you can ask the questions and you can explore, "Oh, what if we could do this?" And everybody's got a piece of the action. They're all engaged. And again, if you are making a I mean, a lot of these changes, I live in Toronto. So if you're making a minimum $250,000 or more investment into changing your home. And many homeowners think a renovation is a retrofit. They don't understand the difference necessarily in the language. But if you are making substantial changes to your home, you want to make sure that you have a solid plan in place before you make those changes because this is your largest asset and this is a huge investment. And if you make a mistake in one area, like you said, Meredith, you may have to pay again later down the road to fix a mistake that could have been prevented if you'd had a good plan. So IDP, we break it down. There are different phases. Like you talk about what are your goals. You do a little. You have your energy advisor do like here's where the house is today. Here's where maybe we want to go if you're doing targets, and then you bring everybody together in a design charrette and or multiple conversations. Then you make some decisions, and then your team can execute.
Yeah. I think, Ben, that I've started to try and think about IDP more as front end loaded process of inquiry more than um, a complex structured process. And so as I was thinking about this podcast, I wanted to, I'm thinking about projects of all sizes. So someone comes to us and says, hey, I want to put some attic insulation and get a heat pump. Or someone says, I'm renovating my house. I also want to retrofit it, like big, big project. Really, we're asking the same 4 questions every single time. So the first question we have to ask is not what does the homeowner want to do, but what problems is the homeowner trying to solve? Because sometimes they'll come to us and say, hey, I want to switch out my windows. My question to them is why? Well, I don't like the way they look is a very importantly different question than, well, there's condensation on them. Oh, now my next question is a building science question. Do you have mechanical ventilation? Maybe you have a $3,000 problem, not a $30,000 problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
so what problems is the homeowner trying to solve? What are their pain points? That's the first question.
Mhm.
And then the second question is, what information do I need to properly diagnose the cause of those problems? And so answer number 1 is I need an energy advisor, but maybe I also need an F280, balance point calculations, blah, 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 goes on and on. So second question is what information do we need for diagnosis or data? Then my third question right on the heels of that is who can help me provide that information? Because I'm pretty smart, but I need a lot of brains to do the work that we do at Think Bright. So I want to borrow brains and bring them onto my team at the front end so that I can be really smart through the rest of the project. And then the last question is who needs to be involved in the logistics of actually getting the work done? And so that's from the flooring guy, maybe it's an engineer, maybe it's even an interior designer, right? Like, so when I ask those 4 questions, what are the problems? What information do I need to diagnose? Who do I need to help me gather the information? And who needs to be involved in the logistics? Now I have my team. And I built a team that then together we can decide how many meetings we need to have, how structured. Am I doing my IDP in-house or am I hiring a Casey IDP trained professional? How
Mhm.
complex does it need to be? How much is it going to cost? Do I need to charge my client for it or is it just good process? There's a huge spectrum of the how of an IDP, but I think those 4 questions define the scope of an IDP, the cost, the team.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go for
Because
it.
one of the things, like when we do a lot of our facilitation training, is that we want to actually utilize the IDP to go beyond what you think you need. And so the purpose of an IDP is to question what you think you need and even question, Meredith, for you as a person doing it, that's why bringing in the experts, the question is, why have we made, why do we think this? Is this the best decision for what the homeowner goals are? The homeowner goals and what they're wanting is the North Star at all times. And so always bringing back, in the conversation, okay, is this going to satisfy what we're trying to do? Is there something better we can do? What haven't we thought of? What are we missing? Is this the right way? And the why is your best friend and going on the high level first, and then because we run the risk in a lot of these conversations of still continuing these siloed conversations. And the whole thing with an IDP is it's integrated. It's iterative. We're going back and forth, testing, questioning, is this the right pathway? Again, whether it's a small group of people or it's a large group of people. The other questions that we often say, because there are some very savvy homeowners, and I'm sure, Meredith, you've worked with some who really understand energy efficiency and such. And there are homeowners that aren't savvy. So some of the questions we often suggest, and we have, like when we do our training, we give the facilitators sort of a template for, we call it discovery questions, sort of what you were talking about, Meredith. But one of the questions is, how do you want to use your home? So when we make these changes, how are you wanting to use it? Because somebody, what are you wanting to do? Who's going to be using the house? Because, you know, they may not understand what you mean by comfort. They may say, oh, I'm fine. Just, yeah, if I'm sitting by the window, I might have to throw a sweater on. You know, I've had to do that all my life, so they don't, so it's putting sometimes those questions, asking the questions in a way that, can get to, like you were saying, Meredith, some of those, okay, what are the things, the issues that we're going to have to, as a collective, figure out? And sometimes even inviting to the IDPs people that the homeowner may not have thought about. So they may not have thought of solar. They may not have, and you bring them in. They may not have, like, just for information, because the IDP is an educational opportunity. And
Mhm.
when you're looking at the existing home world, you mentioned it earlier, Mary, you may have to roadmap. So you
Yeah.
may introduce, like some people, we were just doing some training, and there was a fellow who said, I wish we'd done an IDP. And you know what I missed? They had a boiler. They had no, they were really concerned about moisture issues in the home. And in my renovation upgrade report, because he did the enter guide sort of process, he said, I put in there, you should really look at your heating system and maybe think about a heat pump. But the homeowner said, well, my boiler's fine. I don't want to replace it. And that was a missed opportunity to say, well, what if we changed what if we did this? What happened? And what would we to think about? And okay, maybe your boiler's fine today, but
Mhm.
maybe, it's 10 years old. So what if you had to change? Let's plan that you're going to have to change it in 5 years. And that's what an IDP can do. So it's not just the immediate, but it's what's down the road. And I know that, there's a lot of talk about the importance of road mapping, especially in the existing home market, because homeowners have only so much money. And Meredith,
Mhm.
as you know, and you mentioned building science, energy advisors, we all look at the house as a system. We look at how it interacts together so that the decisions are going to make sense for the entire house and we're not looking in silos.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think one of the key things that we've talked about that initial charrette meeting where we bring everyone together. And I think it's so important too. It's more than just the energy advisor or contractor, which is usually one of those two that's having those initial conversations with the homeowner about improvements to their home, but it's bringing other people in and having that conversation around those goals. And
That's right.
that HVAC contractor is going to think of questions to ask that as a contractor or EA energy advisor, unless you've been in that exact situation many, many, many times, you might not think to ask them. So it's as Meredith pointed earlier, it's bringing
Yeah,
those brains in that you need to
Yeah.
provide the right
Bar-
perspective.
borrow some brains, get them in the room.
that's right.
We learned over the last couple of years, we did a pilot project, 10 homes, single family homes in a single integrated design process cohort. And we had a logistics snafu with how we had planned our IDP process. We're doing 10 homes at once. We've got a master plan for this process. And I won't bore you with the details about what happened, but we wound up having to have our site meetings before our first IDP meeting. And I would never look back. So what happened was we all went to our site meeting with the homeowner. It was, in this case, it was general contractor, electrician, solar provider, envelope specialist, and general contractor.
And
Uh,
so really quickly, what had been done before that? You'd had an initial energy audit done for the
yep.
home and a few brief conversations with the homeowner, and you hadn't really gotten into the nitty gritty yet. Is that correct?
Not at all. Not
Yeah.
at all into the nitty gritty. So we were going in cold and I was not feeling very good about this. But what happened was so great. So we show up at the homeowner's house. They're like a deer in the headlights because 5 of us show up at the same time. Very invasive for people to have trades in their home. So, you show up respectful, introduce everybody. And what happened was We built knowledge and trust in an hour or less, on-site, unscripted conversations that were inquiry-based about the homeowner's space, the building, the electrical, the air quality. The homeowner was there to speak for themselves. We were not biased by having met as a team ahead of time about what the solutions were. So we came in very eyes wide open in a position of sort of enforced curiosity. And the homeowner watched us as a team develop an understanding of their home that they were invited to participate in. So now later, we went away, we had our technical IDP meeting where we're talking about F280s and balance points and dew points and all the stuff that homeowners just get overwhelmed about. When we presented solutions back to them for their consideration, it looked to them like their house. It looked to them like their problems and solutions to their problems. And they went from, I thought I was going to change my windows, to, I am super stoked about having a deep energy retrofit.
So Meredith, I would say that that first meeting is your first design charrette.
And we're
And
just
so,
not, because our
yeah,
trades, I'm not going to a design charrette. I don't belong there. I call it an all trade site meeting.
well, I think you call it a planning meeting.
Mhm.
And because sometimes if you call it a trades meeting, my only concern would be that, again, the homeowner might feel intimidated. But if you're just saying a general, or a goal, a goal, a shoot for the star meeting or whatever. The term charrette is the formal term, and people get intimidated by that. If you just say, we're going to have a planning design meeting. And like we said earlier, it's just, the terminology integrated design sounds very formal. We see resistance to it in both new construction, same thing, because everyone goes, oh, it's going to be really expensive. Oh,
Really
we can't
expensive.
afford that. That's going to be like, we're already, concerned about how much everything's going to cost. And now you're going to add another dimension to it. So it's just, I think it's semantics and we just have to change that. But again, what you did, Meredith, was the first design charrette meeting. Then you had a second one, and then you had the final
And
design
then
meeting.
we executed a project really, really smoothly, with a
Yeah.
really happy homeowner and outcomes matching modeling, and everybody's super happy. I think if we can start to soften the language around integrated
Yeah.
design, we'll get a lot more buy-in. In the new build side of things, there's resistance, but there's kind of like, architects, designers, we're accustomed to planning a new build. What we're not accustomed to doing is really deeply planning a renovation, let alone a retrofit. And our consumers, homeowners, are anxious about what it's going to cost. Our trades are like, they're smoking busy. They don't want to spend more time in meetings. And so I
Yeah.
think we need to talk in juxtaposition to what we want to achieve. We need to ask about what we sometimes are or achieving, or what we're trying to avoid. And what we're trying to avoid is more meetings. We're trying to avoid confusion. We're trying to avoid unmanaged cost or change orders. We're trying to avoid going over budget and over time. And there's
Yeah.
only one way to do this, and that's project management. If you're not managing your project, all of those things are going to happen. So whether we call it IDP, whether we call it planning, it's a poorly managed project is a poorly managed project.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe let's take a minute and go back and maybe let me paint a picture. You guys correct me where I'm wrong in this, but let's discuss a poorly managed project. What standardly happens? A homeowner calls a contractor. Maybe you saw their ad. Maybe you saw their truck driving down the street. Hey, I want to replace my windows. I want to do this work. That contractor and let's say the contractor is invested in retrofits, in doing deep energy retrofit, going all the way, but he doesn't understand the importance of bringing people in early. So standard process would be him meeting with the homeowner or her, and identifying, okay, let's reclad, let's add 4 inches of mineral fiber insulation on the exterior. We're going to replace your furnace with a heat pump as well. Do your windows. We're going to do all this work. And the homeowner's like, okay. So the contractor goes back and he reaches out to his trades. Maybe he's worked with them a lot. Maybe he's trying to find a couple new trades. He's still trying to find that perfect heat pump installer guy, but he just says, okay, I've got this house. I'm looking for this replacement, that replacement. He gets the bids, homeowner's happy, work proceeds. And then somewhere down the road, ideally or unfortunately, whatever, with the HVAC installer, he runs into some issues that things aren't working right during the installation. They didn't think about where that heat pump was going to need to be ducted out, or how they're going to install and duct the ERV or HRV. Was it going to be tied into the bath fans, or replace the bath fans, or how is that going to work? And worst case scenario, they hit a wall where they need to pause and stop and figure something out. And depending on the exact contractual arrangement on that, it can be more delay or less delay. But
I'm having Ben, it gives me heart palpitations as a general contractor because we've been there. I delivered an IDP training recently that I called the train wreck.
Mhm.
We did a very small project and I was super arrogant. I was like,
A
I've got
train
this.
wreck on a small project?
Yes, it was magic. I was very arrogant. I'm not going to lie. I thought, I've been doing IDP for so long. I know what I need to know. We're just going to go ahead and do this project. Couple of windows, well, like 9 windows, but in one part of the house, ducted heat pump and replacing an existing ducted furnace and some flooring. And that was it. No problem. Well, the homeowner didn't want they wanted us to general most of the project, but they wanted the HVAC done separately. And that was my first mistake. So, but I didn't know it yet. The collision point on this project, the wheels went off the cart. It was like the flooring guy and the HVAC guy show up at the same time. And they don't know what the other one is doing. They have no idea. They don't even know why the other guy is at the house. The homeowner didn't know who was showing up on that day. Now the homeowner's like, whatever, they work from home. It's annoying. People are showing up. They have to manage it. Our project manager's losing his mind because he didn't know they were showing up. And we wound up in the end delivering a project that on paper was awesome. The homeowner's more comfortable. Building is far more energy efficient. We've improved the quality of the home. We've even improved the aesthetic of the home, but they're never going to call us back because it was dreadful. We managed to bring it in on budget, but it was very, very painful. We were lucky we didn't wind up with a fist fight. A half hour free, because everybody's going to be there anyway, IDP would have completely solved the problem. No cost, just good process. And this really small project would have come to the same outcome with really just less humiliation involved. It was a total train wreck. And so you magnify that to a really complex whole home retrofit and it's a disaster.
Yeah. And
It was terrible.
there can be so much coordination. In the few retrofits I've been closely involved with in the Calgary area, I've seen electrical panels moving, and that wiring conduit is also being tied in, routed through the exterior insulation system that's being installed, and you're closing off these vents that are no longer needed. You're installing ducting over here. There's a lot of crossover between the general envelope work and the electrical and mechanical work, which requires so much
Plumbing
forethought
and plumbing
and
and all
plumbing.
of that, right? And plumbing. I mean, I've heard of scenarios where they had solar and nobody, I think the homeowner ended up buying, the panels, and then it was going to cover the entire roof. And somebody said, well, where's the stock going to go?
Mhm.
And, you know, uh-oh. And,
Uh-oh.
uh-oh.
But you
Oh
would
yeah.
save all that money on not having an IDP, that's when suddenly it's like people ask me, contractors and trades ask me all the time, well, who's going to pay for it? How
Yeah.
much is it going to cost? The most expensive IDP I have ever run on a retrofit was about $7,000.
Mhm.
Think that saved the homeowner literally hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to talk to people because our market, the homeowner market, the consumer mind is not, we've cottoned on to paying for design for interior design and paying for planning for all kinds of
Yeah.
things. The retrofit market hasn't made that case very well. And I think the only way to make it well is in reverse. What's it going to cost you not to do it?
Well, I think though that there are assumptions. So I unfortunately, I'm a homeowner. I say unfortunately because before I made a lot of decisions on my house before I came involved, Casey. And I'm so embarrassed by the decisions I've made on my house
Whose
that
house,
I
right?
can't change without it being a meaningful change and investment, right? Homeowners often are relying on who they feel are the experts. And if
Hmm.
somebody is an HVAC contractor, well, they must know the most recent thing. They think if something is being built, it must be to the highest standard, like even with building codes and such, without realizing that the building code is the lowest bar,
Yeah.
right? And so they think these people, they've been doing it forever. They must know what they're doing. So there's this assumption, even with, well, they're an architect, they must know this stuff. Well, architects focus on this. Interior designs focus on this. Engineers focus on this. They don't focus on the whole thing together. They all have their part of the pie, and you almost need to look at a renovation as a pie, and that the house is the pie. And everybody who's there is a slice of the pie, but together they make that pie delicious. And when you're putting a pie together, you have a recipe. Because if you don't follow the recipe, it's going to taste like crap. So maybe, so I think we have to help the home. We don't want to diss the trades. We don't want to diss our architect or our designer, but we say we all bring something to this and we all have to come together. And I think, and I know that some of the people, now again, this is maybe more new construction, but actually no, there are some renovators who have said, if you want to work with me, this is what we do. This
We
Hmm.
is how we operate.
we will
And
not
it's
go
not
in.
an option.
It's
It's
not
part of
optional.
our fee.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's not optional anymore.
And here's why. Yes, we may be a little more expensive, but look at what you're going to get. We did, there was one person, again, in our training, he did an existing home. So you're wanting to quantify, Meredith. Here's an example. There was a renovation that was 350,000 was the budget, plus a 10% contingency above that 350,000. There was no plan, and the homeowner was away. So the designer made changes in the middle,
Right.
things that the homeowner hadn't really asked for. There was
Mhm.
no North Star.
Mm.
So they ended up using a contingency of 20%. They spent 350,000 plus 20% over. The home was many months over time. The homeowner didn't get the home that they were hoping to get.
What's so
And
sad?
had they done an IDP, so this person did a little assessment. What if we had done the IDP? They would have come in probably within the $350,000 budget, if not less, and it would have been delivered on time. And the homeowner would have got what they had asked for. So there's a quantification of the benefit of an IDP,
Hmm.
because that budget was what? $65,000-$70,000 over budget. And who has that?
So
Hmm.
much money. We
Yeah.
talk in contingencies, and this is cost of construction is through the roof. The place to save money, the place to reduce your cost of construction is not by chucking the plan out the window. It's not by
Yeah.
having no plan. It's by investing in the plan so that every penny that you're spending is spent intentionally on your project. And
That's
that
right.
is when we're talking about IDP, we're actually talking about real people's money and real outcomes. And we say to our clients all the time, my money is exactly the same as yours. I don't have an extra $60,000 either.
That's right.
Neither do you. And so you're asking me not to plan your project because you don't want to spend two, four, $6,000 in planning. I'm going to blow your 60 grand, no problem like that. And so I think we have to speak. There's a sort of a change in salesmanship that's required in the
Hmm.
trade. As a general contractor, I am not installing windows, installing insulation, doing air sealing. I'm providing a service, the outcome of which is comfort, cost effectiveness, and capital asset management. And that means I have to be prepared to walk away from projects where the
Mm.
homeowner will not pay me to plan their project. Because if they won't pay me to plan their project, I'm going to fail. And that's going to be my fault because I accepted the project. So
There's the saying, if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
100%. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So in this IDP process, we've talked a lot about those initial all hands, all trade site meetings with the homeowner. Those initial meetings bringing everyone all together. And the overall process is it's really starting those conversations, having those early meetings very early on in the design process. And then it's maintaining contact as needed throughout the project. And during those early meetings, you kind of understand the complexity of the project and people will vocalize, I think, is the ideal of where they need to be looped in to be kept on track. And so I think the core, and connect me where I'm wrong, Cindy. I see your wheels turning, but the core is bringing in everyone to those initial conversations and then keeping that contact throughout and making sure everyone's on the same page. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily tons of meetings throughout the entire
No,
process.
no, 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 no. And I think, what's interesting is that there have been IDP meetings where an I was in one where an HVAC provider actually shared an idea that had nothing to do with HVAC
Hmm.
directly.
Yeah.
So again, the people you're bringing in, they've been on other projects. They've seen really cool ideas. They've seen innovation. This HVAC guy goes, "Have you ever heard of Barrow?" Yeah, I was working on a project, and you know what? Because of that aero barrier, they really tightened the house, and they had really good windows. So we actually we were able to bring in a smaller heat pump.
Right.
And again, the IDP is not also a lot of people get caught up on that individual cost. And the nice thing with an IDP is you're actually looking at the total cost of the project.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, you know what? Yeah, these triple glazed windows, they cost a lot of money. But they could also do this. Again, that house as a system bringing things together. The other thing that we talk about when we do our facilitation training, and we really do emphasize not just IDP, but facilitation skills. And the important part of it is the documentation. So we actually say, write the notes down when you've had those meetings. Create those action items. Okay, who, what, and by when, and follow up with that. I know that's basic project management. Sounds basic, but it doesn't always happen. But then you also have this is the decision we made and why. Because often, Meredith, you know this, you may have the design, the plans and everything. Then you have to get, the permits and such. And that can take several amount of time between when you actually start maybe the project. And then you're on site and maybe you're a month into the project and you go, why the hell did we say we were going to do ABC? Well, you pull out your notes and you see this was a decision we made and why. Now, you may have to make a change mid project because, we're thinking of things theoretically. As you know, Meredith, sometimes there are tweaks that have to be made on site. Tweaks, we'll call them. That's a gentle word. But, if you have that plan, then you can say, okay, well, we made the decision based on this, but this is now a new reality. But we're now still making that house as a system, building science, informed decision and change, which which is not going to be as costly if we hadn't we're not going to revisit something that we've already decided. We have that documentation to say this is why we're doing it because sometimes the IDP facilitator may not be there. They've created that playbook, given it to their contractor because Meredith, you do IDP, but there may be a team that doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Right? And now you have the playbook that you can reference. And the documentation is really, really important because that can help with things several months later from that planning meeting.
I'm just thinking about an example of a project that we worked on. It was a whole home deep energy retrofit. The homeowner wanted their home to get like near passive. We went through an IDP. We had heat load calculations. The heat pump was spec'd, because of the windows and insulation, and it's right size for the home. And on site, I just happened to catch a conversation one day. Our project manager said to the HVAC contractor, "Oh, sure, that's fine. We can switch that part of the home from slab on grade to crawl space. That'll make it easier for your ducting."
Ooh.
I said, "Stop. This is a fundamental change to the heat load and heat loss and gain for the home." It was a hard stop work order. And the reason that was very scary. I've never had to do that on a project as a project manager. Everybody stop, everybody go home. Homeowners freaking out because, oh, this is going to cost us so much money. I said, why am I doing this? Because your house has been designed as a system. And if we change A, it has implications for B. And maybe the decision's okay, but I need to call my energy advisor and
Yeah.
understand the implications. Turns out, had that change been made on site, it would have been absolutely disastrous. It would have made the heat pump the wrong size, not large enough. We would have had moisture issues in the home, comfort issues, air quality issues, blah, blah, blah. One day stop work because there's a clear why. House is a system. This affects the envelope. Clear justification for it. Homeowner went from being really, really angry to really, really relieved that we had a clear process that was understood. And so this, Ben, you talked about like continuous communication. We think about IDP as something that happens at the beginning of the project, but it really, if you don't continue it through the project, if I had just left that project to like self-manage, there has to be someone who's that annoying person who says, why? What are we trying to accomplish? And
That person should be at that initial meeting.
100%.
Your site's super. It's not just, Meredith, but it's the person who's actually going to be on site. So then they have
Mhm.
heard those conversations and have that understanding
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then can be guiding their, the trades and their people accordingly. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's that constant communication. We compare it to a standard project where contractor, HVAC installer would do his quote. Contractor would say, "Okay, yeah, we got the project. I'm anticipating you'll
That's
come in
right.
on this
Yeah.
week." And then he gets the call, brings his equipment, installs it, and like that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
A
problematic.
silo.
I think another thing that we don't talk enough about, one of the benefits of IDP, an integrated design process, is, there's so much disrespect for trades. Many of the trades that we work with, unfortunately, many of the trades that we work with won't pick up the phone for the general public anymore. They'll only work with contractors because they get the respect that they deserve. I say an HVAC
Mhm.
contractor is the hero of climate action. Without them doing a really good job, we will never meet our climate action targets. I want that person's brain in my meetings. If I
Yeah.
go, another IDP where the energy advisor said, "Oh, for this house, I have a great solution. We're going to do some cassettes in the roof. It's sort of like a mix of ducted, ductless. It's going to work really well in the house." And the HVAC contractor said, "No way, I'm not doing it. Here's why on this house." So we went from, I was so excited about this amazing solution that the energy advisor had come up with, which was a really good solution, but it was unimplementable. My HVAC contractor knew that. So my HVAC contractor feels and is respected. The energy advisor feels and is respected. And that means that we're all prepared to fail forward together because every
Yeah.
retrofit is an opportunity for major failure. But if nobody's hiding anything because they're in a failure averse context, like IDP just makes it so we can all bring our best game to the table and make mistakes together and learn forward together. It's
And
very
and
much
to make a quick contrast for that situation too, alternatively, you would have worked with the energy advisor, designed it in, sent the HVAC installer the quote to do these cartridges around the or cassettes around the place, and he'd be like, "No, I'm not doing this." And you're like, "Why not?" And then you're playing the telephone game rather than all being in the same room and having that
Right.
reasoning and conversation.
5-second
But it's
conversation versus like 25
yeah.
emails.
But it's also an opportunity to challenge sometimes the HVAC contractors because sometimes they just want to do it the way they're used to doing it. And that may have been, I'm just being the devil's advocate in this end, the EA may have come up with something that you're like, holy crap, that's a great idea. And the HVAC, no, it'll never work. I mean, we've
It'll
seen
never
this
work.
happen. And so that's where the facilitation comes in. I'd like to understand it more. And then you can say to the other people who may not be directly HVAC, but what do you think of this idea?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? So then it's not, Meredith against the HVAC or the EA against the HVAC. You have the posse who can weigh in their opinion, and I think that can also be very helpful because sometimes, and there's also nothing wrong when you get into an IDP where you have perhaps that the homeowner, like you said, may have their HVAC buddy, could be their nephew Joe, and nephew Joe doesn't know very much. There's nothing wrong for the contractor to at some point say, contractor Joe may not be the right person for your project.
There's a point of
And
confidence that's required
yeah,
at contractor or IDP facilitator. We want to listen very well to our homeowners. It's their home,
that's right.
their money, it's their pain points, it's their solution.
Absolutely.
But our job, once we've listened, is also to advise and to advise into the end outcome. And, sometimes nephew Joe is not the right one, right?
That's
Or
right.
I think it's critical to set some baseline expectations with homeowners in that first conversation before you're in IDP, before you establish a business relationship with this homeowner. Here's what we do and why we do it. And it also needs to be very clear that if you are not interested in participating in that, I actually can't help you well.
That's right.
And we're not a good fit for each other, right? It's a way to
That's right.
it's a way to gauge whether a consumer is prepared for the excellence that you demand. Because if you fail in that excellence as a general contractor, the liability and consequence can be extraordinarily high.
Absolutely.
We want to deliver excellence,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
slowly rotting our homeowners' assets because we
Mhm.
made really dumb building science mistakes is not what we're into.
Well, you're in a sense, you are an investment advisor. And
Yeah,
we
I
have
love
to
that.
start using this language. You are an advisor for their investment.
Yeah.
An IDP, you hire an investment advisor to do your stocks and all of that stuff. What is the difference? That's why you have an energy advisor. That's why you have the IDP facilitator. They are your investment advisor, and they're going to bring the experts together to ensure that you are investing properly in the project. And I think that, we need to put it in that way, and that may be another way to sort of sell it. Meredith, that's my gift to you.
I love this. Really, Cindy, I really, really love this. And I think what we're doing, Ben, by you
Mhm.
facilitating this conversation, we're IDP is not new, but we're trying to take a language subset and apply it into an emergent industry, which is retrofit contracting. And it's not landing. I mean, we can talk about IDP until we're blue in the face. It's not going to land. So we're in the process of co-crafting new language to deliver something that we already know how to do into an industry that's not prepared to hear the language we're using.
Yeah. And so I know right after this call, you're going to be going on LinkedIn and revising your title to investment advisor as well to add in there. So
Home
I want to,
investment, a renovation or a retrofit investment advisor.
yeah. And so another term came to my head, like, oh, let's throw this out there. Like, what about for that initial meeting, like an all trade site meeting or whatever? Like, what if we're talking about a project alignment meeting? Like
Yeah.
making sure everything's aligned. And I think to bring things home and sum up, we've had a great conversation. I'm very grateful for you making the time today to join this. So IDP, it's really about getting that everyone invested in the project and on the same page at the beginning and maintaining that contact. And I think one of
And
the points
excited about the
and
project
excited,
too.
yeah,
Excited about the project.
invested in it
That's
and
right.
understanding. And one of the points you made earlier, Meredith, about that homeowner experience, that's
Yeah.
one thing I hadn't really thought about so much before this conversation. Like, you're really enhancing the homeowner experience. I used to oversee a lot of, as a consultant, over many remediation projects, and I dealt with lots of boards of directors. And when there were issues with the contractor on site, I was the middleman, and I saw lots of unhappy um, occupants and board presidents that I had to deal with and be the middleman. But preserving and maintaining that homeowner experience, we're minimizing delays, minimizing that stop work. One thing we didn't really touch on too much, but the other thing we're potentially avoiding is rework, when things have to be torn
Oh, that's right.
apart and
Absolutely. That's right.
redone. But it really starts at the beginning in getting everyone aligned and invested and excited about the project. And we've talked a lot about that facilitation, and it's not a simple thing. And some
No.
people are more wired for it than others. And I think that's really great why Casey has developed that training for IDP facilitators in, if you
Mhm.
want to really become well versed. It's not just guiding a conversation. You're not leading a panel at a
No.
conference. It's
No.
it's driving it. And you mentioned earlier, Cindy, the documentation
Yeah.
in that conversation as well that can be referred back to throughout the project.
I think often homeowners are forgotten in the process because people start to nerd out, as I say, like to say. And the homeowner, if they can understand their home better, they can operate it better, they can appreciate it better. I mean, boy, if you think about it, we buy a home, we maybe spend 2, 3 hours in the house and make this major decision about this home, and we have no idea what's between the walls necess we get a home, maybe a home inspection, and maybe they tell us what they think and such, but this way, the homeowner feels involved and engaged because
Mhm.
many times the designer say, "Oh, don't worry about it. The architect, don't
Trust.
worry about it. The contract, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And I think we don't give the homeowners sometimes the respect that they deserve. And the IDP process by involving them and having the facilitator translate the technical stuff in a way so that they can be engaged in the decision making as well and understand
Mhm.
why certain decisions are being made. I think we need to give the homeowners a little more opportunity, maybe a little more credit, and help them understand their home better because then they will also value the investment that they have made and maybe be proud of it. I mean, how many people now are talking, they might be wearing the I love heat pump t-shirt or wanting to order them because now they understand how much of a difference it may have made to their comfort, to their operating costs, to the environment, to everything.
Yeah. Well, we got to get some I Heart IDP
I
t-shirts
heart
made up too.
IDP. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the most rewarding moments for me in owning a residential construction company have been as a result of a really great, creative, fulsome IDP process that came up with good, affordable solutions for a homeowner and wound up with that homeowner saying, I can finally breathe in my house. My family members have severe respiratory issues and we can breathe. It's really, I love building new houses, but doing retrofits well is incredibly rewarding because we're changing people's lives in the
That's
presence of the object that they spend literally 90% of their time in. And so by making it's difficult to explain comfort to people. It's difficult to explain how much better their home is going to be. We need to capture more homeowner stories about,
Yeah.
we need to put those into the conversation about IDP by hearing homeowners' outcomes. 1 year later,
Yeah.
what's your
Mhm.
home like? They may not even remember what their home used to be like. That's the crazy thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
we walked into a house recently where the homeowner wasn't too sure. We go through this process, finish the work, and I walked in the house and I could smell how much better their house was the minute I walked in compared to the first time I walked in.
Right.
They're not going to remember that later, but I'm going to
Yeah.
remember it. I'm going to talk to people
Yeah.
about it.
And they may not have to dust as often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Saving you time.
Wait, we're supposed to dust in our homes? Don't look at my dresser.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me today. This has been great, and I think we could really probably go on for another hour.
So
Absolutely.
And maybe in the future we can do a part 2, and maybe Meredith, we can get one of the homeowners locally that you've worked with on after a year post project to give their thoughts on IDP. I think it's
Oh,
a
that.
great project. So I guess, Meredith, I want to give you the final word as we wrap up the recording here. What is one thing you think needs to happen to get more of the industry and homeowners, for that matter, embracing the integrated design process?
Well, that is a very tricky question here. One thing that needs to be done to basically improve uptake of IDP.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the top.
I
There's going to be many, but what's the
so
biggest
I'm
you
going to
can do?
go with IDP needs to be a secret internal code language. We need to stop calling it that. We have to call it planning for asset management or planning for investment, whatever. I
right.
don't know what the right language is. And next, we need to help contractors and trades understand that they are fully capable of doing integrated design. They are salespeople, they are experts, they're dealing with these problems every day. And generally, they are very committed to positive homeowner outcomes. And so, if we can simplify this process, simplify the language around it so that they can right size it for their business, then we can get everybody at every level thinking like an integrated designer rather than thinking about it as a cost.
Awesome.
That's going to take time.
Yeah. But it's something we got to work at. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks, Cindy. I'm getting a new T-shirt and a new job description. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Awesome. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here and just know that this is still something that the association is working on, language and all of that, support
Mhm.
materials and things. So there's more to come in the very near future, I'm hoping.
Awesome.
Great.
We'll all stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Renewing Homes. If this conversation added to your thinking, consider sharing it with others working to improve homes. Better homes through better retrofits. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations.